right, I'm here with Tom Chilton and Chris Robinson. So, what inspired the different artistic moods for the various zones? Azuna looks very Greek, for example. It seems like each one has its own different theme. Do you want to speak on the inspiration for each?
Yeah, man, it starts with mood. We talk about just mood in the beginning, not natural environment, not like, really what areas of the world that we want to the real world or the fantasy world that we want to explore. It really is like, if you read through a good story and it sets you up to go from peaks to valleys, and it's that experience of having lulls so that you can, get ready for like a high point or some points of rest because you're going to go into something really evil and dark. We think about it very much in that terms of like an emotional journey through the world. And that's certainly back when we were a little bit more linear, it worked really well to know exactly how, or close to how players were going to be progressing through these zones. But we take a look at the content in total now because we're really with the way the scalability and scaling, how we have it set up now, you can kind of go anywhere. So that removed a little bit of that ability to know exactly how you're going to experience those things. So really we just talk about that. What's the mood? And then once we have that down, we kind of take a look at, are there realistic places if we want to go from some of these zones a little bit more familiar and real world examples of something that from Earth, and then the fantastical, like how are we going to go crazy in this area and make it something that you've never experienced before. Set those against each other so they're not kind of back to back and really contrasting with each other. And then it kind of spiral, like all that stuff just starts to spiral on the color and theme and mood and more, like atmospheric kind of stuff.
Yeah, I do a lot of content for World of Warcraft.
Oh, nice.
And I like doing some crazy things, especially with the new technology coming out. I do a lot of VR.
Okay.
And I wanted to know, like with the new NVIDIA Ansel, will there be a way to be able to do some kind of VR capturing, like in World of Warcraft?
People are playing around with that right now. I wouldn't say that we're officially developing anything by any means, but there's people on the team who have sort of that fledgling fan interest in pushing VR forward and how it relates to our game. And we've seen a couple of things come through. I'm not sure about the technology that you're talking about exactly, but there are people that are playing around with that stuff.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Cool. That's awesome.
I want to be in there, like in VR. I want to do this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
It's neat, man. It's amazing how transporting that is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. We had a setup at the office about, 6 months ago or so, that one of the guys on Hearthstone team did, and I forget which VR setup it was, but it was one where, you set up these kind of poles in different quadrants of the room, and then, you're able to just sort of walk around in the environment in the VR setup, and it was inside a Warcraft inn, so it was like being in the Lions Pride Inn kind of thing.
Yeah.
It looked really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's what reminded me. I was like, oh my god, if this worked in WoW, oh my god.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? What races and creatures in Legion had an art overhaul? And it looks like Worgen kind of have a spotlight in Legion. So, any updates to their models or anything like that, or their art?
No, not for the Worgen. I still personally feel like I want to go and address some of the concerns that we've had for a while with female Worgen specifically. We've heard a lot of
I've heard a lot of that.
Yeah, a lot of player base that they just are unhappy with how they stand, like how they look next to the male version. So nothing for the Worgen. We revamped basically the entire Legion kit. So we took a look at all the demons that existed in Burning Crusade. And there's actually a story difference between the two. We really wanted to show like a visual progression between Legion as you experienced in Burning Crusade and the technology that they were using and the way that they were invading that planet and why they were there. So you see, remember there were a lot of Moarg and Ganarg and like they had all the machinery that was like drilling into the planet and kind of like, it was very much about like an industrial sort of infestation, I guess, if you will. And so we took a look at that, and this time around kind of picked and chose which specific creatures we really wanted to kind of tell the story of, like if that was sort of B Squad that invaded Burning Crusade, and now we're saying that they're coming to Azeroth, and this is like A Squad, and it's not just sort of the terraforming and the industrial kind of infestation. This is way more of the Big Daddy kind of like the real Magic Fell stuff. So we actually, to answer your question, and get to that point, once we figured out all those base units that we wanted to do, we did pretty much everything other than the smaller Ganar kind of units are completely revamped. A lot of them have animation work, and some of them have new rigs, so they actually move better, deform better, or move differently, deform better. And then from there, man, I think the list is probably too long for us to go on right now.
That's good. Hearing the demon stuff. Does that play back into BC at all? So any of those models get updated, or are these completely new models and BC just stays as it is?
I don't think we've actually gone back at this point and
Right.
adjusted any of that stuff. We always kind of try to do that when we have the opportunity to just make sure that the old world's staying fresh. And if we have like it's the same unit, it's just a better looking version of it, let's have somebody go back and do that. So, there's a good chance we will at some point. We haven't yet done that. But they're all based on those models. So we took the model, completely rebuilt it from the ground up, repainted it from the ground up. So they're higher quality, they're higher resolution. Very similar to what we do with the player character models. We kind of did that with all of those units and made sure that they felt more unified through their armor design. So we kind of wanted to show that this wasn't sort of the story of the Legion, right, is that there are all these planets that they invaded and they've kind of conscripted the denizens of those worlds into their service. So that's why you get the very disparate, like, Fellhound guys and the Siobhan and these things that don't necessarily haven't felt in the past like they fit into one cohesive kit. But we didn't really want to whitewash it and just go like, well, let's make them all kind of like use the sort of the anatomy behind the Siobhan and like do a pass on all the creatures to kind of homogenize them in that way. We wanted to keep the kind of individualistic nature of all the different units, but then use the armor that they wear as a way to kind of unify them and make them look like a really well-organized army that's coming in. That's really is just like the A squad. They mean business. They're coming in to take us over and destroy everything, essentially.
All right, my questions are PvP related.
Awesome.
All right, so prestige ranks.
Yep.
Okay, can you tell me what is going to be the max prestige ranks? Because I'm doing math right now. I want to be one of the first to get the highest rank, whatever it is. And be doing crazy runs.
Right.
And or rewards. Like rewards, are there going to be more rewards than the ones that are
Right.
like
Right.
something visual?
We do plan to continue to add prestige ranks and continue to add rewards as the patch cycle goes on.
Mm-hmm.
For 7.0 launch, we'll have kind of what we have in the beta now.
Mm-hmm.
But what's interesting is that we have this concept of these class sets that can have different attachments. And it really offers the opportunity to create some unique one-off pieces that we can kind of sprinkle around the game in different ways that are kind of hard to get, right? And PvP Prestige is definitely one of those ways that it would make sense to, have, that's how you can get the rogue belt that has the poison bottles on it, stuff like that. So we feel like there's a lot of opportunity there to add some new stuff that we haven't been able to do
That's
before.
great to hear. So, but right now it's 5, right?
Yeah,
Right now
yeah,
it's
5
5,
right now.
okay.
Yeah. What do you got now?
No, I didn't prestige yet. Like,
Oh, okay,
Because
okay, gotcha.
I like testing out all these
Right,
abilities.
totally.
But yeah, I definitely plan on doing it.
Okay,
And grinding it out.
Cool.
That's gonna make the core of my content for Legion.
Right.
Especially live streaming. Yeah.
Awesome.
That's cool.
Awesome. Yeah, it'll be fun for the audience to kind of watch you do the reset and be back to not having the
Yeah.
talents and like, oh, look at how he sucks
It's
now.
gonna be exciting, but it's gonna be a grind.
But
when
it's
we do it
Swifty, so
together.
he's still good.
We'll make sure you look good when you get there too.
Yes, please.
So with over 36 artifacts, that's a lot of art to create.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about that. Obviously we see some, Ashbringer, right? That's an easy one, right? But
Yeah.
there's a lot of other stuff that, maybe people aren't as familiar with. So talk a little bit about the art creation.
Fishbringer.
There you go.
It all culminates with Fishbringer. That is the most epic fishing pole weapon we've ever made.
Fishbringer.
It was a really awesome process, and I say that because it's very easy for us to get segmented as a team sometimes and really siloed in the sense that if we know what our orders are artistically, we put our headphones on and we go to town, and oftentimes I think we miss out on that partnership that happens when we're sometimes in a difficult position of finding out information that we don't know off the top of our heads and need to work with design to get to that point. The artifacts, and as you speak of, artifacts that are lesser known or that maybe are not known at all or weren't known until we kind of started talking about them, that was very much a process of several conversations and meetings and interactions back and forth with design to talk about, hey, what are some of the heroes? Like, if I play a rogue and I look at the game and I talk about the people who the lore characters that I identify with as being sort of the most heroic rogues in the game, and Garona, kind of obviously being a very classic example of that. What are what encompasses them as a character? What is like kind of the core elements of that character that we respond to, and then is it something that would be appropriate to follow through with an artifact. So design essentially came up with kind of that, that initial list, and we beat that up and talked about, oh, that's kind of cool visually, or that would really suck, we don't want to do that. And that was kind of the most creative, fun part of that process. Then we had the opportunity to really cut down on, like, we create on any other expansion hundreds of weapons, and those are the ones that you're just mowing through, right? Like every other quest, you're throwing your dagger out and grabbing a new one, or your mace out, or whatever it might be. And so we talked a lot about going way back to vanilla and the early days of WoW, how we tend to look at those days as sort of the glory days of, I remember Judgment being my most favorite set of all time. And why is that? Is it that it was visually superior to anything that we've done since then? Was it the colors? Was it the fact that it really made you feel like you really embodied what was core to your class? And I'm sure all of those things come into play, but ultimately I think there was a sort of like, we forget the pain of how long we spent wearing that, right? Because now it's just about like, you remember it because you spent so long in it. You don't remember those days where you were just like, man, I can't wait to get out of this stuff and get into something else. But there's value there. And when you talk about artifact weapons, it really afforded us the opportunity to go like, okay, we're not going to be throwing these things out. And clearly you're going to have the opportunity to change the visuals and kind of, like pick and choose which ones you want to wield. But ultimately what it is that we're affording that opportunity for you to really bond in a way with a weapon or a piece of art that you haven't had to for quite, or that you haven't had that kind of opportunity for quite some time. And then really empower you to build it up in terms of visual style and the power that it wields, and feel like at the end of this that hopefully, number one, you really connect with it, and that it represents who you feel like your character is at its core, and then ultimately tie into kind of what your overall look is as you kind of start to get towards the end game, or if you're prestiging or whatever you might be doing, so that if you're end gaming in Legion and you take a look at your character, you have that moment of like, I look like a effing badass, and that's what we always worry. We want you to end up, right? So
This has to do with the stats and the gear for PvP.
Yep.
I know they're gonna have a lot of stats, but the main stats that actually transfer over is its stamina.
Yeah.
Because I noticed that when I was playing the game, I took off my gear.
Right.
All of a sudden, I lost my health. I was like, wait a minute. So
Right.
stamina.
Well, I mean, all stats transfer over. It's
Yeah.
just with less of an effect, but it's only beyond a certain eye level that the effect drops off, right? So once you drop below a certain eye level, every single piece you take off you're losing those stats, and it has a significant impact. And I forget if it's like 800 or it might be 810, it might be 820. I don't remember exactly. But once you cross that threshold, every incremental piece of gear, every incremental item level means very little. So at that point, it's just, it'll add 1%. Let's say you get an upgrade that's 10 item levels higher. That's just going to add essentially, well, if all your items give you 10 more item levels, that'll give you 1% more, of all your stats effectively. It'll take your kind of your base stat template for PvP, and it'll multiply that by an additional 1% for every 10 eye levels.
But is stamina included in that too?
Yes.
Okay.
Or at least it should be.
like, I better check on that.
Because I saw a huge difference when I took off my gear
Interesting.
with the stamina. So I was like, maybe the stamina.
That's why I was wondering if you were dipping below the item level threshold.
Okay.
Where
No, I went from like 2.4 million, taking off a bunch of pieces of gear, down to like 600,000 or something like that.
that's a lot.
I know that was, but like the previous week I was doing a BG or something like that. I took off my gear and the stats didn't change at all.
Gotcha.
So it might have been.
Yeah, it could just be something fluky going on in the beta.
I would stack stamina.
Right.
If that was true.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
If stamina didn't have the diminishing returns, totally.
I know, probably in the video they're like, "Why did you say that?" Swifty?" Now they're gonna nerf it.
Now they know. All right. Something that I've seen a lot of people ask is when or at what level can people start getting a second artifact for their off spec?
I believe we have that set right now at like level 102. And that's when you'll first see the quest pop up in your order hall that will kick you off on your next artifact. And then I believe the third one is at like level 106 or 108, somewhere in that neighborhood. And so you can start working on it pretty quickly. What we didn't want, the reason it's not available right at 100, is we didn't want you to feel like the right way to play was to start the game first getting all 3 artifacts and then going from there. We kind of wanted you to get into the swing of doing your normal questing and stuff like that. So we kind of figured by 102, you're probably about finished with one of your zones, and then you're kind of making a decision about where to go next. And so it's at that point that it makes sense to give you that second option. So it's like, oh, do I want to go do another zone, or do I want to get my second artifact? Becomes an interesting choice.
Well, thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. It's a great interview.
Thank you guys.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.